Good morning. It is still morning. Thank you for braving the rain to be here today. I'd like to welcome all my colleagues who are here today. They had a great couple of weeks in Albany, doing a lot of good work and getting a lot done, so I want to applaud them on their good work, and that includes what we're doing here today. I want to welcome Assemblyman Levine, who is chairman of the Elections Committee and carried this bill, as they say, but he's long advocated for these reforms, as has the whole Assembly. We have Senator Myrie with us, who has gotten a lot of great work done just in his first few weeks, so congratulations to Senator Myrie. We're joined with our great Lieutenant Governor, of course, Kathy Hochul. Let's give her a round of applause for all her great work. We have a special guest and a special friend, a great New Yorker and a great activist who has worked very hard on this issue. It's not his full-time job. He has a different job where he is a great actor and producer. As everybody knows, he recently did a movie on Dannemora and the Dannemora prison break that has done really phenomenally well. It's been nominated for like 12 awards. It's already won a couple of awards. And he has told that story in a phenomenal way. I had a small part in that series. Michael Imperioli played me. You know, everyone sees themselves in a certain way. So, you know, I was thinking, you know, Brad Pitt would have been good. I thought maybe a George Clooney, but Harrison Ford. But Michael Imperioli did a really great job. And that's something I would know about, actually. So I thought he did a great job. But Ben Stiller has been not just a professional success, where he's had extraordinary success, but he's never forgotten where he's come from, and he's always given back, and he's always worked to give back. And that's a true question of character, and we thank him for it. And our parents were longtime friends, so there's a connection there. Ben has obviously chosen to follow in the footsteps of his father, which I can only imagine would be very difficult to do, but sometime we can talk about that. The time we're at governmentally is truly a critical time. It's not just about what New York does for New Yorkers. It's what New York does in this moment in history where we have a federal government that is hell-bent on rolling back individual rights, civil liberties that we believe are essential here in the state of New York. So we have a federal government going backwards, which is truly characterized by regressive policies. By their own words, everything they talk about is we want to go back to the good old days, back to the good old days, back before Roe v. Wade, which would take women's rights back 47 years, back before we had the LGBTQ rights that we have today, back before the union movement was strong, back before we had all these annoying environmental protection laws. That's what they say, and that's what they're trying to do. New York, we're doing the exact opposite. They want to go backwards, we want to go forwards. They want to reduce our rights, we want to increase individual rights. And that's what you've seen this week. They're looking to roll back Roe v. Wade. We want to enshrine Roe v. Wade, both in the law and in the Constitution. They want to roll back environmental progress, and we want to introduce a Green New Deal because we understand that climate change is real and extreme weather is real, and the viability of the planet is on the table. That's what's really at issue. So you see them trying to take us backwards, and you see New York leading us forwards, which is what New York has always done historically. We have served a role where we don't just increase rights and values for the people of New York, but we've always set a standard for the nation as to what the progressive path forward is. And you can go back to women's suffrage, and you can go back to the women's rights movement, and you can go back to the environmental movement and the civil rights movement. It all started in New York. And then it resonated across the country. We've seen it in our own time when we passed marriage equality, first big state. And it changed the national dialogue on the issue. When we passed $15 minimum wage, changed the national discussion on the issue. When we passed free college tuition, changed the national dialogue. And when New York says it and New York does it, now we have something to point to. The issue that we're dealing with today, I think, goes to the essence of what so much of this is about. You have people who feel disenfranchised. You have people who feel alienated, that they are not part of the government, that they don't count. Big money is running the system. I believe the federal government has purposely disenfranchised voters. I think there's been an attempt in this country, all across this country, to make voting difficult for people. They don't want to vote because they don't want their vote to count. And you see it done in different ways, in laws that require onerous identification burdens, and they are trying to keep people from voting. We want to do the exact opposite. And we've been trying for many, many years to pass voting reforms because the truth is New York's voter turnout is among the lowest. So we do have reforms to make, and we've been trying to get them done, and now we have. We have more to do, but the reforms that we're talking about today that I'm going to sign into law in a few minutes are going to make a really, really big difference. The early voting is going to be transformative for the system. And one of the things that this legislation does is it brings early voting to New York, and I say amen to that. We will have one primary date election rather than having separate elections. We will have pre-registration for young people, so it'll be easier to register, and that's what this law does. It closes what's called the LLC loophole that not everybody is aware of, but it's one of the egregious violations that was symbolic of big money's role in campaigns, and that loophole will be closed with this law. I'm going to propose we get a couple of other things done before we finish this session. I believe we can move towards online voter registration. If you can buy goods and give your credit card and do everything online, why can't you register to vote online? I mean, no. Upstate New York in a primary, the polls don't open until noon, but the polls open at 6 a.m. In New York City and other parts of the state. Why? You want people to vote, open the polls so they can vote. And if you're really serious about wanting people to vote, let's make Election Day a holiday so people have the time to go out to vote. So I'm excited about what we have done. I'm excited about what we're going to do. And I'm excited that at this difficult time for the country, when the federal government is literally shut down, the only thing worse than a day when the federal government shut down is a day when the federal government is taking us backwards. So they have us between a rock and a hard place. Shut down or we go backwards. But New York is saying, no, there's a different way, and the way is to go forward. And that's what this country has always been all about. That is the American evolution. You live and you learn. You advance, you grow, you go forwards. You don't go backwards. Martin Luther King, the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. Yes, if good people work to bend the arc towards justice. Not that it automatically bends. It bends because good people exert their will and they get involved and they vote and they express their opinion, and that's how society moves towards justice. And that is exactly what we have seen in New York over these past few weeks. So we are very, very excited about all of that. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ben Stiller now, who's, as I said, taken a particular interest in this issue. He worked very hard. He was exactly right. And I'm pleased to tell him his work was not in vain, that we're going to make it a reality, and we're going to sign this law. And with that, I give you Mr. Ben Stiller.
Thank you. Very excited to announce my appointment as the governor's acting chief of staff. I look at my total lack of governmental experience as a plus. No, I'm really happy to be here and to stand with the governor as he's signing this critical legislation today. The governor stood by the film and television industry over the last 8 years in supporting tax breaks and creating a lot of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs for people in the film industry. And he really goes very far to make sure that productions come to New York, going as far as staging a prison break at Clinton so that we could inspire a series and have Michael Imperioli play you after Brad Pitt turned the role down. Really, he's always been there for the film industry in that way, and I really appreciated that when we were making our show, because it was hard to actually get access to the prison, and the Film Commission and the governor made that happen and allowed us to bring the dollars to the state and to also tell the story in a better and more realistic way, so I really appreciate that. And it gave me a chance to spend some time with New Yorkers upstate, and I grew up in New York. You know, to feel what they feel living in that part of the state and with the economy, which is in trouble up there. And you know, this issue of voting rights is very important for all New Yorkers. You know, it's fundamental to our democracy, and right now, as the governor was saying, the federal government is really, you know, not trying to help people have access to voting. It's really making it harder. And so I think these laws are a very important step, and are setting an example not just, you know, in the state, but for the federal government as well, as to what we should be doing in terms of having people have the access to voting so that they can, you know, really determine their future. So I'm really happy to be a part of this, and I want to applaud the governor and the legislature for doing what you've done to make this happen.
Thank you.
So. And thank everybody else who's supported the legislation. So,
Well done.
thank you.
We'll turn it over to Senator Zellner Myrie, and I want to thank him for his good work on this and his rapid ascension into understanding how the legislative process works, and that at the end of the day it's about producing and product and making change and getting things done, and that's exactly what he did. Senator Myrie.
Thank you very much, Governor. I'd first like to acknowledge some of my colleagues that are joining us today. We are joined by one of the bill sponsors, Senator David Carlucci. We are also joined by another bill sponsor, Senator Brian Kavanaugh, who's been a champion on these issues for many years. We are joined by Senator James Sanders. And we are also joined by Senator Anna Kaplan. You know, yesterday I had a freshman legislator experience. I took the Amtrak down from Albany, and it was delayed for about 3 hours because the engine had died. And I couldn't help but think that if I had to make it down to the city to vote and was dependent on this, I would have lost that right through no control of my own. And it is why it's so important that we are signing pieces of legislation like early voting today that opens up the opportunity for folks to participate in their democracy. It is the foundation of our democracy, and I could not be more proud to sit here as the chair of the Senate Elections Committee in signing these laws into legislation. I really want to thank our Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who made this a priority for our conference to pass it on the first day of business in the legislative session. I'd also like to thank our colleagues in the Assembly who have been passing these pieces of reforms year after year after year, and who now have partners in government willing to sign it. And I really want to thank the governor as well, who has been a champion on these issues for many years, and we're really showing the rest of the country. I know everyone's transfixed with the chaos emanating out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but today we stand as a united government here in New York under the leadership of the governor, showing that we can do the business of the people. So it is a truly historic and extraordinary day, and I'd like to also thank the advocates and the activists and the voters who have been pushing for this and who have made today a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As the senator pointed out, the New York State Assembly passed many of these reform bills for many years. And we'd have great arguments in Albany, but ultimately we had a Senate that would not pass these reforms. So I was explaining to Ben before we came down, there's been an energy and an exuberance almost in Albany about now finally getting these measures to the floor, getting them voted on and getting them passed. But it's especially true in the Assembly, where many people such as Assemblymember Chuck Levine and Brian Kavanaugh and the Assembly members who are here, Joanne Simon and Dick Gottfried and Deborah Glick, worked on these issues for years and were frustrated year after year after year. And now we see a new reality and we see things happening. And with that, Assemblymember Chuck Levine.
Thank you, Governor, and thanks for your good work, and thanks especially to our wonderful Lieutenant Governor who fights for what's right and what's just every day. And to Ben Stiller and to my colleague, Senator Myrie. Senator, thank you, because we don't have to pass these bills again every year in the Assembly. So these are not the easiest of times. These are crisis times for Americans. But Americans and New Yorkers have always risen to confront the crisis and master it. And that's, I think, what has happened here. So many thanks as well to everyone who's here today who has fought. Some of you have fought for many, many years to preserve the cherished American right to vote, and now we expand it. So I also want to thank my colleagues in the Assembly, some of whom are here. Robert Carroll is one of the sponsors. And we can give him some applause. Joanne Simon is another sponsor. Thank you, Joanne. And Jeff Dinowitz is another sponsor. Thank you. Joining us as well are a couple of other real fighters for human rights. And those are my friends and colleagues, Deborah Glick and Richard Gottfried. Please give them some applause. Our democratic process depends on our ability to make sure that we can vote and that our votes count. But for too long, our laws have been stuck in the distant past, making it more and more difficult for our fellow citizens to actually go to the polls and to vote. We should, and we all know this, be making it easier for New Yorkers to vote. After all, voting is a right. It is not a privilege. And as the Supreme Court said about 140 years ago, it is the essential right. The right to vote is the methodology from which all other rights emanate, and it preserves all of our other rights. So as chair of the Elections Law Committee, I could not be more pleased, I could not be prouder to be here today. And on a personal note, as the grandson of political refugees from the tyranny of Tsarist Russia, voting in the House I grew up in wasn't a privilege. And it was even more than a right, it was an obligation. And our obligation today is to preserve that right for all New Yorkers. So these landmark laws that have now become the law will make things better for all New Yorkers and will help democracy tremendously. I want to thank the Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie and the Governor for their leadership throughout this entire process. Their support was not just instrumental, it was indispensable to fulfilling this dream. And I want to thank my colleagues in the Assembly and the Senate who have helped to make this day a reality and improved our democracy, not just for today and not just for tomorrow, but for generations to come. Thank you.
Okay. All that's left is the signing, as they say. Take this, please, ma'am. We ready? Even signing your name is hard when you're in It's the bureaucracy. Congratulations, the bill is signed. That's why it's a signing pen. Congratulations, Senator.